I could hear the voices of my husband, Tawny, and my mother-in-law, Nancy, in the distance. They had looked down on and insulted my precious burger shop. I had endured Nancy's harassment for 7 years, but to be trampled on like this? Honestly, I was at my limit. I had gone through many painful experiences, but never had I felt such humiliation. I was too upset to even cry. I want a divorce, I said, squeezing the words out from deep in my throat. The next day, I started packing my things to leave. Click. When I looked to see what it was, I saw Tawny's stepdaughter, Sally, pointing her smartphone camera at me with a smile. Divorced twice? That's really funny. Pathetic. I bet your ex-husband dumped you too. Tawny chimed in, adding insult to injury. Just then, we heard the sound of a car outside. Looks like my ride is here, I said, and everyone looked at me with puzzled expressions. Outside, a luxury car with a driver was waiting, and both Tawny and Nancy, along with Sally, were stunned. Ignoring their murmurs, the door quietly opened, and out stepped a tall, handsome young man who looked like a model. In that moment, Sally recognized him and screamed, "Lien!" He was a model around Sally's age named Lien. Nancy and Tawny just stared at him, not understanding what was happening. They couldn't believe that such a big star was standing before them. Sally, covering her mouth, said excitedly, "But why is Lien here?" I calmly and coolly responded, "My name is Maria." I had been divorced before, but now I had been remarried to Tawny for 7 years. We both worked, with Tawny employed as an office worker while I ran a burger shop. My shop is located just off the main shopping street near the station. Welcome. Would you like a burger? I've been working at this burger shop for a long time. Let's go back 7 years. Whether it was my voice or the smell of the burgers, Tawny walked into the shop. He was handsome, tall, and such a stunning man that I let out a sigh for a moment. Outside, it was drizzling, and while people hurried past, Tawny stood still, looking at the menu inside the shop. He must have looked at it for a good 10 minutes. Excuse me, I'd like to have this burger set, please." I remember how shy Tawny was as he said this. After he paid and I handed him the burger, Tawny asked, "Do you have some time later? Maybe we could have a meal together." Huh? No, that would be difficult. Then, could I at least have your contact information? Naturally, I refused that too, but Tawny came back the next day. He bought the same burger set and made small talk before leaving. He would mention things like how nice the weather was, how pretty the flowers outside were, or how delicious the pizza was the day before. Repeating this, I gradually became attracted to Tawny. We started sharing personal stories, and found out that both of us had been divorced, which made us bond even more. "If it's all right with you, could we go out together?" Huh? Actually, I've been in love with you since the moment I saw you. That one word brought us closer very quickly. It didn't take long for us to reach the goal of getting married. The time spent with Tawny was so enjoyable that it flew by in an instant. Even after marrying Tawny and starting to live together, I continued running the burger shop. Of course, there were times when I thought about closing the shop. The business wasn't doing well, and the building was getting old. But Tawny always smiled. "It's okay," he said. "Your burgers are delicious, Maria. Be confident. The shop can still be fine with some renovations." "Even if you say renovations, I don't have that kind of money." "I'll cover it, don't worry. Let's get an estimate from a contractor." Even though we were married, I felt bad about it. I tried to decline several times, but Tawny didn't seem to mind. On the contrary, he was happy to help. Eventually, we agreed that he would cover about half of the renovation costs. After the renovation, the shop looked much nicer and had a refreshed atmosphere. It's like a brand new place. Thank you so much, Tawny. No matter how much I thanked him, I couldn't express my gratitude enough. Surprisingly, after the renovation, customers kept coming in. Some even mistook it for a new shop. The change in the shop's ambience probably played a big role. All right, let's keep this momentum going and add a few more items to the menu. Enthusiastically working on it made every day feel fresh and exciting. Even a simple trip to the supermarket turned into a hunt for new burger ideas. I started putting more effort into my cooking, and Tawny would genuinely smile and say, "This is delicious." Focusing on the shop seemed to bring new energy into our lives. The burger shop became my passion, and adding new items to the menu made me work even harder. Before I knew it, a year had passed since I remarried Tawny. Compared to when we first started dating and our early married days, our conversations had significantly decreased. It's true that we've both aged and settled down, which might explain it. I didn't question that aspect. However, what did concern me was Tawny's frequent change of interests. I've often heard the saying, easily excited, easily cooled off, and that's exactly how Tawny was. His hobbies changed quickly, and each time he got into something new, he would buy various items for it. When he got into golf, he bought numerous balls, clubs, and outfits. He even became a member of an out-of-state country club, enjoying weekly rounds of golf with fellow members. At first, I was genuinely impressed by his enthusiasm. But as golf equipment started overflowing our house, making it hard to organize, Tawny got into another hobby: solo camping. The golf buddies had suggested solo camping, which Tawny quickly took to. I asked him why he wanted to go solo when he had a family. "That's just how men are," he said, stroking his chin and trying to look cool, almost as if he were reveling in his own romantic notions. I didn't really understand, but perhaps he was more of a romantic than I thought. It seemed a bit cringy. Tawny, as expected, began accumulating all sorts of solo camping gear. One-person tents, sleeping bags, folding chairs, cups, plates. He ordered everything he could find online. "Isn't this a bit too much? Where do you plan to store all of this?" I asked. "I'll just put it in the shed for now," he replied. However, the shed was already full of golf equipment, leaving little room for the camping gear. He shrugged in a nonchalant manner, trying to look suave. "I'll keep the camping gear in my room, and the tent and chair can go in the shed," he said, eventually squeezing everything into the shed after a bit of rearranging. Tawny had numerous hobbies: biking, fishing, bouldering, and more. His gear filled the house to the point where it was hard to keep track of everything. He never seemed to get rid of anything, and the clutter only grew. Eventually, his interest in solo camping waned, and the camping gear lay untouched. It was always my job to clean up the house, and Nancy never missed a chance to criticize me. "Maria, you're messing with Tawny's things again, aren't you?" Nancy would say sharply. No matter what I did, she always found something to complain about. "With all this stuff, there's hardly any room to walk. You're just making excuses." "Oh, how I despise it," she would say, giving me a disdainful look before walking away. When I remarried Tawny and moved into this house, Nancy also started living with us. When she showed up with a large duffel bag and a rolling suitcase, saying, "I'll be staying here for a while," I was surprised. Apparently, Tawny had agreed to it without telling me. Quietly, so Nancy wouldn't hear, I asked him, "You didn't tell me about this." "Don't worry. Mom's a good person, and if anything happens, I'll protect you," he assured me. But I had a bad feeling about it. My premonition came true, and from the next day, Nancy's harassment began in earnest. "The seasoning is a bit bland, isn't it? I can't even taste it," she would say, adding more dressing and balsamic vinegar to the salad. "If this is the level of cooking at home, the burgers at your shop must be just as unimpressive." Her words stung deeply. It felt as if she were invalidating everything I had worked for. "Mom, stop it. She made this for us." Tawny would initially defend me when Nancy started living with us. But soon, whenever Nancy said something, he stopped saying anything at all. It seemed Tawny couldn't stand up to Nancy when she was being forceful. Her meddling didn't stop there. "Maria, what's this dirt? Can't you even clean properly?" she would say, pointing to the dust accumulated in the entrance. "And the stairs too. There's dust in the corners. How could you not notice?" "I'll take care of it," I would say, thinking that if she had so many complaints, she could help out herself. But she never lifted a finger to cook or clean. She was all talk and no action. Tawny eventually stopped defending me entirely, preferring to avoid conflict. When Nancy's harassment began, he would leave the table and disappear somewhere, leaving me alone to face her. "See, Tawny left without eating because of you, Maria." "Actually, it's because of you," I thought, but stopped myself from saying it. Tawny had a stepdaughter, Sally, who sided with Nancy and looked down on me as well. "Hey, I told you I hate fish. Why did you make it? Are you trying to annoy me?" Sally, a high school student, was very outspoken. Spoiled by Nancy, she refused to eat anything she didn't like. "Fine, whatever." Even though I cooked with nutrition in mind, it didn't matter to Sally. How much longer could this go on? I wondered every day. With all these troubles weighing on my mind, my only solace was the hamburger shop, where I put on a brave face and kept a cheerful demeanor. Since gaining a good reputation, sales had increased. Something I could never have imagined before the renovation. The shop's success is all thanks to Tawny, I would often think. I tried new things, such as seasonal menus and healthy options. However, Nancy and Sally would mock these efforts, leaving me feeling humiliated. Even 7 years after remarrying, this dynamic hadn't changed. No matter how many snide remarks they made, I had learned to let them roll off my back. When I didn't react, Nancy and Sally would eventually lose interest and stop their taunts. Tawny's late returns home became more frequent. I had my suspicions, confirmed by the scent of women's perfume on his suits and shirts. A sweet, feminine fragrance he wouldn't wear. There must be another woman. Tawny, who quickly lost interest in his hobbies, seemed to be the same with relationships. Amidst these troubled days, he made a shocking declaration one evening after I returned from the shop. "We're selling the hamburger shop and cashing in. Maria, you need to find a better paying job." What on earth is he suddenly talking about? I was stunned into silence. "What? What did you just say? Sell the shop?" "That's right. Quit running a shop where only poor people come." I couldn't fathom what had brought this on. Nancy appeared behind him and chimed in. "He's right. Running a shabby hamburger shop is embarrassing." Her eyes sparkled maliciously, as if she had come up with a brilliant idea. "Why do we need to sell my shop? We aren't in financial trouble, are we?" "We need the money right away," Tawny said. "For what?" I asked, bewildered. "Just do as Tawny says without talking back. You're his wife, stop arguing," Nancy snapped. "Really? If the shop sells, can I get a new bag?" Sally, who had been listening, chimed in. Sally, a college student about to start job hunting, had recently developed a taste for luxury brands. "I don't want to sell the shop," I protested, but my words fell on deaf ears amidst their uproar. "The shop is under my name now, remember? You agreed to that," Tawny reminded me, and I suddenly realized the gravity of the situation. During the renovation, we had changed the ownership to his name, thinking it would be beneficial in the long run. I completely trusted Tawny. I never imagined it would come to this. I can hear their voices shouting in the distance. The rights to the beloved hamburger shop I had cherished were taken away. I was looked down upon and criticized. For 7 years, I had endured Nancy's constant beratement. But this felt like the final straw. It was the most excruciating experience of my life, beyond anything I had endured before. I was so devastated that I couldn't even cry. "I want a divorce," I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. The next day, I began packing my belongings. I filled my rolling suitcase and several boxes with clothes, personal items, and even my favorite mug. Click. I turned to see Sally pointing her smartphone camera at me. A smirk on her face. "2 divorces, huh? That's hilarious," she sneered. "Pathetic. No wonder your first husband dumped you too," Tawny added, piling on the insults. He was just like Nancy. And I couldn't help but think it was no surprise, they were family, after all. Nancy hummed a cheerful tune, clearly enjoying the moment. With most of my packing done, I started moving my things to the entrance. As I finished, I heard a car pull up outside. "My ride's here," I said, noticing their puzzled expressions. I opened the front door and stepped outside, carrying my bags. A luxury car with a driver stood waiting, causing Tawny, Nancy, and Sally to look on in astonishment. "What's with this car? A luxury car? Why? Hey, someone's getting out." Ignoring their murmurs, I watched as the car door opened quietly. Out stepped a tall, handsome young man, looking like a model. Sally recognized him instantly and screamed. "It must be Lien." Lien, the same age as Sally, was a model and an international star. He had become a national sensation, starring in blockbuster dramas and movies. Known for his versatility, he could play everything from a charming high school student to a villainous character, earning him the title of a genius. Tawny and Nancy stared at him, clearly unable to believe that such a huge star was standing before them. Sally, covering her mouth, said excitedly, "But why is Lien here?" I calmly replied, "He's my son." "What? Your son?" As they tried to process this, Lien waved gently, his expression kind but his eyes cold. "Hello. It seems my mom has been in your care." His tone was polite, but his gaze was icy. As he looked at Tawny, Nancy, and Sally one by one, almost glaring, the atmosphere grew tense. "I've done some research on you all," he continued. Tawny's shoulders trembled, his face pale and sweaty. "I'm aware of the situation with the shop. You'll be receiving a compensation claim." "Compensation? What are you talking about?" "That's ridiculous. Don't worry. We won't be taking any of your money. But we will be reclaiming the shop as compensation." He said this with a dark smile, his words chilling the air around us. Tawny and Nancy were frozen in place, unable to move. "I'll let our lawyers handle the rest." It sounded like a line from a movie. Lien then gestured for me to get into the car. Nancy was the one who couldn't stay silent. She shrieked, "Wait a minute! You're planning to sell the shop just like the rest of us, aren't you?" "Yeah, you're no different from us." Despite their shouting and accusations, Lien remained calm. I couldn't tell if he was acting or genuinely composed. Lien took a small breath and said to me, "Remember when we used Mom's burgers as a treat for the film crew? They loved them." "Really?" "Yeah, they were a huge hit. The director even said he'd want more for future shoots." "Orders are going to pour in." Lien smiled. Among the numerous orders, I noticed an increase in requests from the filming locations, which made sense considering the number of staff and cast members. No wonder we got so many large orders at once. That's why I'd never sell Mom's shop. Lien. I couldn't help it, my eyes welled up with tears. I never thought I'd see my son grow into such a responsible and dependable person. It felt like a scene from a movie, but it was real, and that made me incredibly happy. Sally opened her social media and pulled up a famous actor's account. There, my burger shop was featured, with tens of thousands of likes. "Amazing! It's going viral!" Sally turned to Tawny and demanded, "Why didn't you tell me Lien was your son?" Tawny and Nancy were both stunned, not understanding what was happening. Leaving their commotion behind, I got into the car with Lien. As the car started, we talked and laughed about everything that had happened recently. Looking back, we laughed like this 10 years ago too. Back when Lien was in middle school, and I ran the burger shop with my previous husband. The shopping street was lively then, with regular customers and local shop owners frequently buying our burgers. Lien had been a handsome and popular middle school student since then, and was well known. Whether this news had spread somewhere or it was just a coincidence. A scout from a modeling agency who stopped by the store approached him. They asked if he would like to try being a magazine model. Lien didn't seem very enthusiastic, but I encouraged him. "Don't worry about the store, just give it a try. Not everyone gets such an opportunity. But if you feel it doesn't suit you, you can quit. At that time, you can come back to the store." After that, he was featured in various magazines and started to thrive as a model. But then came the accident involving my husband. On his way back from delivering hamburgers, he stopped by to pick up some additional ingredients and collided with a large truck. By the time I rushed to the hospital, it was already too late. I still remember feeling like I had fallen into darkness with no way out. I didn't know what to do about Lien's education. At that time, the agency proposed that Lien should study abroad. They suggested that he could continue to expand his modeling career even while studying. "Mom, I'll become even more famous and definitely come back. So please don't give up the store until then." And so, Lien went overseas to study, and I stayed behind to run the store alone. Even while Lien was abroad, we never missed a chance to communicate, and I also subtly mentioned my new partner. However, I didn't tell Tawny about Lien. I thought it might cause some trouble with the new family. I wanted to avoid anything that could hinder his activities. Even after I remarried, I continued to exchange messages with him. I didn't mention Nancy's harassment or the issues with the store's ownership to avoid worrying him. I always sent messages saying I was fine and encouraging him to do his best. Yet, Lien seemed to sense something. "Mom, I've been worried about you recently. So I did some research." "I'm sorry for making you worry." "I don't want anything to happen to you. I'm home. Welcome back." We hugged each other tightly. "And, Mom, about the future." When I listened, I was surprised to hear that Lien had arranged a house for me. "Please don't go to such trouble. I can manage on my own." "It's okay. Please let me show my gratitude." The house was within walking distance from the store, and it was fully furnished, complete with appliances and dishes. I was so grateful and happy that I almost cried. "Thank you for such a lovely home. I'll take good care of it." From that day on, I started living comfortably in that house. Then, Lian immediately hired a lawyer and began the process to settle matters with Tani. He aimed to reclaim the rights to the store and seek compensation for Tani's infidelity. He also planned to demand some compensation from Nancy for the mental anguish she caused. However, what we learned through the lawyer was shocking. Tani was currently entangled with multiple women, at least 4 others besides me. It was disheartening to realize how untrustworthy he was. But in hindsight, I considered myself lucky to have divorced him. Additionally, I heard from the lawyer that Nancy and Sally had become reclusive. They had been bad-mouthing my cooking and the hamburger shop to friends and neighbors, fabricating stories about bland taste and even contamination by rats and insects. Their baseless accusations were not taken seriously, partly due to the high ratings and positive reviews our shop received on social media. Consequently, they were viewed with disdain as people who spread strange rumors. Sally even lost a job offer because of her negative posts on social media. "I did nothing wrong. It's all that woman's fault." I could almost hear Nancy's shrill voice, sending a shiver down my spine. Tani, Nancy, and Sally, who cared so much about appearances, must have found it hard to go out, suffering greatly from the consequences of their actions. As for me, I continued working at the hamburger shop even after the divorce, and every day was fulfilling. Thanks to Lian, I eventually regained the rights to the store. When I received this happy news, I was so overjoyed that I jumped up high. It meant that much to me. Lian also introduced the shop to his fellow actors and directors, leading to a television feature. This attracted customers from far and wide, and on holidays, our burgers would sell out quickly. We hired more employees and expanded the shop. Though mistakes and troubles occurred frequently, I was just grateful to be able to keep the shop running. I never managed the shop alone from the beginning. Even now, I feel as if my former husband is still with me, working together. And with Lian and the employees, it feels like even more than that. The bustling shop offers a variety of items, from staple menu items to trendy new options. "Welcome. How about trying one of our hearty burgers?" a young man said. "I'll have this one," and placed his order. "Thank you very much." I try to be at the counter as much as possible, selling together with everyone. Today, too, the shop is very busy. Thank you for everything until now. From here on, you can handle things on your own. What? I thought he was expressing gratitude, but it was a shocking statement. I've supported you all this time. Now I deserve to be free, right? What are you talking about? It made no sense. He claimed to have supported us, but I worked too, earning more than him. I'm tired of you, Mary. You used to be young and beautiful, but now you're useless. How can you say such things? And those kids, they're creepy. I can't understand what they're thinking. Don't talk about them like that. Are you sure they're even my kids? Tell me the truth. I wanted to punch him but stopped myself. A man like him wasn't worth it. So, you just want to leave, right? I'm glad you understand quickly. He laughed loudly and left the house. A few days after he left, divorce papers arrived. Did you get the divorce papers? Yes, just now. Good. Make sure you file them today. I'm getting remarried. She's 17 years younger than you and a real catch. Good for you. Aren't you surprised? After what you said and did, nothing surprises me anymore. Fine then. Goodbye. He hung up. He didn't mention about the children at all. That angered me more than anything else. But his outrageous behavior didn't stop there. A week later, I received a wedding announcement and invitation. He was truly a horrible man. Seeing this, the kids made a suggestion.
Wow, he has some nerve. Mom, are you going? Why would I go to his wedding?
Exactly. We'll go instead.
What?
Don't worry, Mom. We'll cause a scene and get revenge.
But if you do that, you'll get into trouble.
We'll be fine. We have a plan. Seeing them smile excitedly scared me. They are twins with IQs of 140. Maybe their father feared them for this reason. I made up my mind.
I trust you too. Just make sure it's so thorough that he can't recover from it.
Yes.
Yes.
They were perfectly in sync. On the wedding day, they exceeded my expectations. My name is Mary, and I'm 47 years old. I work as a manager at a small local company. I have twins, Henry and Rala, with my ex-husband, Lien. Lien and I were high school classmates and reconnected when we were 25. He hadn't changed much, but one night out, I was drawn to his bright and genuine personality.
Really? You liked me back then?
Yes. But there were always people around you, so I couldn't talk to you. I didn't know that. It seemed he had admired me since high school. I never thought of myself as popular back then. I never thought I'd see you again.
Where have you been all this time?
I was in Boston, but this place feels more like home.
Yeah, I stayed here and got a job right after graduation.
This reunion led us to go out for drinks often. It was inevitable that we started dating. I felt delighted by Lien's intense pursuit, and I began to think that I wanted to be with him forever.
Will you marry me?
Of course. I'll make you happy. He proposed a year after we started dating. We got married and lived happily without any problems. Then, when I was 29, something life-changing happened. The twins were born. A boy and a girl. We named them Henry and Rala and adored them. Since I worked, my parents often took care of them. When they started kindergarten, I noticed something extraordinary. Thank you for always taking care of them.
Mary, come here for a moment.
Mom seemed very excited. She was writing something in a notebook. Peeking in, I saw beautiful letters and numbers written neatly.
What's this?
I tried having them write, and they picked it up immediately. Both of them. Maybe it's because they're twins. I felt a flutter in my heart. I spoke gently to them.
You two are amazing.
Grandma taught us.
It was fun.
That's wonderful. You're both so talented. I hugged them. What's wrong?
You're squeezing too tight, Mom.
Sorry, I got so happy. Let's go home. I wanted to tell Lien right away.
I'm home.
Welcome back. Why are you so happy?
These two might be gifted.
What do you mean? I explained what happened at my parents' house, showing him the notebook.
Really?
And they only needed to be taught once.
Maybe you're right, Mary.
Absolutely. We taught them many things at home after that. Before starting elementary school, they already had a vast vocabulary and could count over 100. Just before they graduated from elementary school, their teacher made a suggestion.
You might want to have them tested.
I see.
There are free online tests you can try.
Thank you. I'll do that. I immediately wanted to have them take the test. However, Lien didn't look happy about it. He used to proudly talk about the kids. Why would you make them do that?
Don't you want to know, Lien?
What's the point of knowing that? From this point on, a rift began to form between him and me regarding the kids. I went ahead and had them take the test. The results were astonishing. Both had IQs over 140.
We're really smart.
Isn't this normal?
What are you talking about? This is amazing. Mom, calm down.
Being scolded by elementary school kids was unexpected. Just then, Lien came home.
Let's show Dad about it.
Yeah. They ran to Lien.
Look at this.
Henry showed him the printed results.
IQ 140?
Lien praised them. But he said nothing. Lien?
Sorry, I need a shower.
From then on, he started avoiding the kids intentionally. As they grew, this became more apparent. The major conflict happened when they were about to take high school entrance exams.
Isn't a local school good enough? These kids have incredible potential. They should go where they can fully develop it.
Let's be honest. They're too smart and unlovable. I don't like them.
What?
I couldn't tolerate this statement.
Is that how you see them?
Mary, you're being unreasonable.
Unreasonable?
I don't understand what you're trying to do. That was exactly how I felt.
Lien, it's fine. We don't care where we go to high school.
Henry's right. We're not concerned. That's not the point. Your dad is neglecting you too. It's natural to be angry if they're called unlovable. Then you handle it, Mary. Do what you want.
Wait, we're not done talking.
Lien ignored me and left the house. Our family started to fall apart. Ultimately, the twins went to a nearby high school of their choice. They probably chose it to avoid causing more trouble. My only role was to support them. After they started high school, Lien hardly spoke to them. You're not talking to them much lately, are you? I talk to them when necessary. Even so.
Besides, lately, they've been looking down on me. That's not true. They think I'm an idiot.
I tried repeatedly to get Lien to communicate more with them, but it was futile. Mom, are you okay?
Yes.
You don't look okay.
I wonder why it turned out this way.
About Dad?
Yes.
But.
What?
Never mind. Do you still love Dad?
That's a sudden question.
I was just curious. I don't fully understand what my children think. But I still love them. He was just running away. I wanted to fix it somehow. When they reached 10th grade, Lien's behavior worsened. He not only stopped talking but also stopped coming home. He returned late on weekdays and left early on weekends.
Lien, what have you been doing lately? What do you mean?
You're coming home late and weren't around last weekend.
I can do what I want. Who do you think is earning for this family? This isn't about that. I'm supporting this family. What are you trying to say? Don't you get it? Is this the woman I admired in high school?
I usually don't get angry easily, but this annoyed me.
Let me tell you, I never thought you'd turn out like this either, Lien. Say that again. I'll say it as many times as needed. You were much better when we met.
Lien, who had been sitting on the couch, stood up and walked over to where I was in the kitchen.
What?
Then, without warning, he slapped me across the face. I staggered from the shock and hit my head on the corner of the refrigerator. My vision blurred. The last thing I saw before losing consciousness was Lien looking down at me with contempt.
This is your fault, Mary. You brought this on yourself. Stay there and think about it.
I regained consciousness to the sound of someone calling my name.
Mom, are you okay?
Henry helped me to the sofa.
What happened?
I just tripped.
That's not true.
I instinctively lied. Some part of me still hoped that the kind Lien would return. No matter what he said or did, I clung to that tiny shred of hope. I believed that we could be a happy family again someday.
Henry, what are you doing?
Rolla, who had just returned, confronted Henry. Calm down. I didn't do anything. Henry explained the situation to Rolla.
Does that mean?
Henry put his hand over Rolla's mouth to stop her from speaking.
You're choking me.
Henry shook his head. Rolla seemed to understand and became quiet. Mom, you should rest for now.
Yes, you should rest. We don't know what could happen next.
But I still have things to do. I tried to stand, but my legs were unsteady. Leave it to us.
All right, I'll rest first then.
Lien wasn't in the bedroom. It seemed he had gone somewhere again. I lay down and closed my eyes, hearing the kids talking outside the door. I couldn't make out the details. I fell asleep. The next morning, Lien's loud voice woke me. My head still hurt a bit, but the mirror showed no serious injury. I followed the sound to the living room. Lien was yelling about his missing smartphone.
You're finally up. Where's the smartphone that was here? How should I know? Then help me find it.
The kids came out, rubbing their eyes.
What's going on so early? The shouting woke us up.
His smartphone is missing.
Smartphone?
Rolla, do you know anything?
I don't. I didn't even know when he came back.
Right.
Just help me find it.
I understood his anxiety about the missing phone, but he seemed excessively agitated. Despite searching everywhere, we couldn't find it. Then Henry shouted.
It was under the couch.
We moved the couch and found the smartphone there.
It's so late. I'm leaving now.
Take care. After confirming Lien had left, Henry and Rolla started laughing.
What's so funny? Nothing.
It's nothing. He was just really panicked. I had no idea that this ordinary event would lead to something so significant. Come on, you two, hurry up or you'll be late. Eat your breakfast.
Yes. Yes.
Lien still showed no interest in the kids. Out of concern for me, they never brought him up. Life continued this way as they entered the 11th grade, with exams approaching. Today is the day you get your test results, right? Yeah. Want to see? Henry showed me his results, all with high scored.
As expected.
These are no problem. I don't know about Rolla, though.
You can't ignore that. You're back?
Just then, Rolla walked into the living room.
Just so you know, I also got high scores.
They were truly remarkable children. But don't push yourselves too hard.
We're fine.
Yeah, we'll study hard for you, Mom. I had been secretly saving money for their education. Honestly, I couldn't rely on Lien. I regularly deposited part of my salary into a special account, but I noticed something disturbing. Several $1,000s had been withdrawn.
What?
The withdrawal date was a week ago. That was the day Lien said he was visiting his parents. I immediately called my mother-in-law, Jane.
Hello, Jane.
Mary? What's wrong?
It's about a week ago.
I was glad I called. Lien hadn't visited his parents. Sorry for the sudden call. It's fine. Come visit us again soon. I will. Thanks. I waited for Lien to come home.
I've been waiting for you. What? A week ago, where were you? That day, I was at my parents'. That's a lie.
I confronted him directly.
I called you Mother. She said you didn't visit. Well, is your mom lying? No. Then what? I was with a friend.
I didn't care about his excuse anymore. There was something more important.
There's something else I want to know. What? You withdrew money from my account, didn't you? Why would I do that? Really? It was withdrawn using this card.
I showed him the card. He immediately averted his eyes.
You looked away. Do you have any idea? Of course not.
I've never seen that black card. He fell into my trap.
Black? This isn't black.
What I had shown him was just a loyalty card. Moreover, it wasn't black but white.
If you don't admit it, I'll go to the police.
Lien began to confess. He hadn't used all the money, but had spent around $10,000. However, he couldn't have withdrawn it without knowing the password.
How did you get the password? I saw you checking the account on your smartphone.
So you saw it then? He nodded deeply.
Return all the money, and I won't go to the police. All right. I'll return it. By when? By next month. If you break your promise, you know what will happen?
Lien became compliant. On the promised day, he returned the full amount. Wait. Where did he get that money? Mom. Oh, am I interrupting?
No, it's fine. What is it?
Take a look at this. Henry showed me his computer screen. It displayed the rankings of various apps. And?
See the app ranked number 1? I made that. It's a study management app. When did you have time to make this?
Between studying sessions.
A friend told me about it, and I started working on it. It turned out to be really fun.
And here we are. I'm constantly amazed by my children. To achieve this in their spare time is incredible.
It's kind of a side project. A side project?
Yeah, don't worry about it.
All right.
With less than a month until the exams. Finally, Lien did something that overshadowed everything he had done before.
Hey, what's Dad been doing? I haven't seen him around lately. Hey! Oh!
We were having dinner. Don't worry about it. Mom, I can't let you two suffer because of this.
What do you mean?
It's time for me to make a decision. Henry and Rolla exchanged glances.
If there's anything we can do, just tell us.
Yeah, we'll do anything. Thank you. I'll rely on you both. Just then, Lien appeared.
Dinner time, huh?
Is there some for me? The kids' expressions changed to one of tension. They were clearly wary of him.
There's some, but... Then get it ready for me.
I prepared his meal. How's school lately? Huh? Just normal, I guess. What about you, Rolla? I'm normal too. It seemed like a regular family conversation, but it had been a long time since I'd seen this. Lien was smiling and talking to the kids, but they responded reluctantly.
Here!
I interrupted the conversation by serving dinner. Since the kids had already finished eating, I encouraged them to go to their rooms. Hey, we were still talking.
What are you trying to do? I just wanted to talk to the kids. That can't be all.
It really is. After that, he ate silently and went to bed. From then on, he started coming home early. I couldn't shake my distrust of him. 2 days later, on my birthday, he did something unexpected. Happy birthday. He handed me a bouquet of flowers as he said that. It was a bouquet of yellow roses.
Thank you.
I also bought a cake. While he was saying this, the kids came home.
Mom, happy birthday! This is our gift to you.
I ended up enjoying the day more than I expected. But when I woke up the next morning, he was gone. He had been sleeping beside me the night before. I got up and searched the house, but he was nowhere to be found. I realized I had been played. Then Rolla burst into the room. Rala?
I've been thinking, and I remembered something. Those yellow roses from yesterday are terrible. Terrible? They symbolize jealousy or wavering love. Really? But why would he be jealous of me? And where's Dad? He's gone. We've been tricked.
At that moment, I understood I had been abandoned.
Last night was his final meal with us. Maybe he waited until my birthday to leave.
Lien had apparently been setting things up in advance because I was later called into work. I was accused of having an affair. I managed to clear up the misunderstanding with a thorough explanation. When I got home, Jane called.
Mary, how could you do such a thing? What? Lien said you were having an affair. I would never do that.
Enough. Don't contact us anymore. Jane hung up abruptly. Lien called 2 weeks later. I was in the midst of contemplating the divorce.
Thanks for everything up to now.
You're on your own from here.
What?
Just when I thought he called, he said something outrageous.
I've supported you all this time. I deserve my freedom now. What are you talking about?
It made no sense. He claimed to have supported us, but I also worked, earning more than Lien. I'm tired of you, Mary.
You were young and beautiful, but now you're useless. How can you say that? And those kids are creepy. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't like them. Don't talk about the kids like that. Are they even mine?
Tell me the truth. I clenched my fists.
So you just want to leave? I'm glad you understand.
He laughed loudly and hung up. A few days after Lien's call, I received the divorce papers.
Did you get the divorce papers? Yes, just now.
Good. Make sure you submit them today.
I'm getting remarried to a woman 17 years younger than you. Good for you.
You're not surprised?
After everything you've said, it's not surprising.
All right then.
Goodbye.
He hung up the phone. He didn't mention the kids at all. That made me even angrier than his selfishness. But Lien's outrageous behavior didn't stop there. The kids, who had been silently listening, finally spoke up.
What did you say? He said he's divorcing me to marry a younger woman. We should have left that jerk long ago. We can't just let this slide.
But you both have exams coming up.
This is more important. Yeah, it is.
I was about to submit the divorce papers, but the kids stopped me. They said it wasn't the right time yet. Let us handle this for now.
We promise you won't regret it.
I was hesitant, but their serious eyes convinced me. A week later, we received a wedding announcement and an invitation to Lien's wedding. What a despicable man. The kids saw it and came up with a plan.
Wow, he has some nerve. Mom, are you going? He should have sent this all at once. Guess he's as dumb as we thought.
There's no way I'm going. I don't want to see his face.
Yeah, we'll go instead. What?
Don't worry, Mom. We'll make a scene and get revenge.
But you'll get in trouble.
We'll be fine. We have a plan. Seeing them smile made me a little scared. They were twins with an IQ of 140. Maybe that's what Lien was afraid of. I made up my mind.
I trust you. Just make sure it's thorough.
Yes.
Yes.
They were perfectly in sync. On the wedding day, they were full of energy.
Rala, are you ready? Of course.
You've got it, right?
Yep, it's right here.
Rala was holding an envelope.
It's just a little surprise.
All right, go ahead. I hesitated on what to say.
Enjoy yourselves.
They left with smiles. Even though I said they could do as they pleased, I couldn't help but worry. About 2 hours later, Rala called. Hello? Is everything okay?
Yeah, it's about to get interesting. What do you mean?
I'm switching to video now. The screen showed the wedding reception.
Mom, can you see it?
Yes, I can see it clearly.
We're about to cause some trouble, so watch closely.
I watched nervously, wondering what would happen. It looked like the bride was about to read a letter to her parents. A large screen behind her was probably going to show some pictures. Just as she started reading, the screen showed a video of Lien with some woman. And it wasn't the bride. What is this? As the video continued, more women appeared. Apparently, Lien liked recording his escapades. How disgusting. He had been with 5 different women. Mom, did you see that?
Yes, when did you prepare this? We found an opportunity. But there's more.
The video took a sudden turn. I immediately recognized Henry and Rala by their voices, even though they were wearing masks.
This man is about to get married, but he has been involved with 5 different women.
And that's not all.
This man is a criminal, practicing bigamy.
This is where it hit me. Henry and Rala had told me not to file the divorce papers for a reason. It was all for this. When the video ended, the wedding venue was in chaos. The bride lunged at Lien, looking like she was about to hit him.
Let's finish this, Henry said.
They walked over to Lien.
Was this your doing? Lien asked.
Why are you angry now?
Yeah, it's all your own doing.
By the way, Mom is watching this too. Do you have anything to say?
Mary. Don't say anything more. Just hearing you call my name makes my skin crawl.
So she said. Well, we're satisfied. Let's go home.
Yeah, Mom is waiting for us.
I saw Jane in the corner of the screen, looking like her world had ended. That was her own fault too. Henry and Rala came home with triumphant smiles.
Great job. That was incredibly entertaining.
Did you like it?
Of course. But where did you get that footage?
Oh, that. When I heard Henry's explanation, it all made sense. First, Henry had been curious about what Lien was doing when he wasn't at home. To figure it out, he developed an app himself and installed it on the day Lien was frantically searching for his missing smartphone. But how did you manage that without him noticing?
He was snoring away. I came up with the idea, Rala added.
And not just that. We pulled all the data from his phone to our computer. That's how we got the footage.
Impressive.
But it wasn't over yet. The next day, Lien showed up at our house.
Hey, what the hell is this?
He was holding an envelope. Oh, you saw it?
What was that?
That was a letter with photos and contact details of your mistresses.
You have no idea what you've done. I got kicked out because of that.
You can't be serious. And by the way, Lien, you tried to spread lies about me at work, didn't you? It didn't work though. So, what do you want?
We're still married, right? Henry said so yesterday.
Oh, that. We just said that to set you up. He still thought I hadn't submitted the divorce papers.
You're a bit late. I already submitted them. But I'll still get the compensation. What? You've got to be kidding me.
Rala, who had been silent, finally spoke.
The joke's on you. You've probably already been sued by your fiancé too. That's why you're here, right?
He fell silent, hit by the truth. And don't forget, you're a criminal. That's true.
If you don't want to get arrested, you should leave now. Damn it, you'll pay for this.
I don't even want to remember you. I never saw Lien again after he left in a hurry. It turned out he refused to pay the compensation and ran away. He was found by the police in a park and taken back to his new wife. His life was bound to be a living hell.
What a pathetic man, Henry said.
Well, he deserved it after everything he did, Rolla replied.
It's like he was never really part of our family, I added.
Now, the three of us live happily together. Henry and Rolla both passed their exams and are starting their new lives as college students. I'll continue to watch over them.
From now on, my daughter and her husband will live in this house, so you need to leave.
Suddenly, Rosa, was told by my MIL Loretta to leave the house. To add insult to injury, my husband Arnold handed me a piece of paper.
Huh? What's this? You'll understand once you see it. It's a divorce application.
Originally, this house was purchased with my savings. Arnold, who only works part-time, couldn't possibly afford it with his monthly income. Despite Loretta and Arnold wanting to live together, I complied with their request. Why do I have to suffer like this? Well, all right. I understand. As I said this, the two of them were overjoyed.
Now, at last, the nuisance is gone from this house. I didn't expect her to leave so easily.
These people are definitely going to hell. Just you wait, I'll make sure you two are the only ones who won't have it good. 3 years ago, I married Arnold, who I initially met at the same trading company. After getting married, I resigned, but there was a reason for this. While working as an employee at the trading company, I often drew illustrations as a hobby and posted them on social media. At some point, my work caught attention on social media, and I started receiving many requests for illustrations, making up to $10,000 a month at times. I've finally started to make some good money recently. Really? That's great. Hope you can keep earning steadily. While saying this, Arnold supported me in continuing my illustration work remotely, and our married life was going quite smoothly. 5 years into our marriage, just when I started thinking about buying our own home, Arnold was laid off. It was due to personnel downsizing amid the recent economic downturn. I've worked so hard for the company, and this is how they repay me. I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say to Arnold, who was apologizing to me in tears. All I could do was to stay by his side until he calmed down. A month later, Arnold started a part-time night job at a nearby grocery store, but his income drastically decreased, earning only about $700 a month. I have to work even harder. Since then, I've taken on even more projects, and our savings have significantly increased. With this much, we can afford our own home. Another year passed, and I decided to consult Arnold about buying our dream home. Hey, should we buy our own home soon? But, you know, I don't earn much.
Leave that part to me. We've saved enough, it's all good.
Arnold, looking somewhat apologetic, responded to my confident declaration. Well, I know this might sound strange to ask, but could we get a house where my mom can live with us too? Dad's passed away, and more importantly, her house is getting old. She even mentioned that if we're building a house, we should live together. Arnold's father had passed away from a heart attack when Arnold was in elementary school. I was grateful to Loretta and understood Arnold's feelings towards her.
All right. Got it. Let's respect Loretta's and your wishes and get a house where we can all live together.
And so, Arnold, Loretta, and I visited a house builder and signed the contract for our dream home. The interior was largely influenced by Loretta's and Arnold's preferences. I would have preferred it in my own style, but oh well. If the two of them are happy, that's all that matters. That's what I thought, never imagining I'd be betrayed in such a manner. About 10 months after signing for the house, it was finally completed. I even set up a study for work, and it's so comfortable. My illustration work is going well.
Rosa, thank you for building such a wonderful home.
It's absolutely fine. I'm always grateful for your help. Loretta seemed really pleased too, constantly thanking me, and I was truly glad to see her happy. Life in the new home was smooth at first, but after 3 months, Loretta's attitude towards me changed.
Hey, can you clean my room a bit? I'm a bit busy right now. Busy? But you're just cooped up in your room doing nothing, right? Arnold's been complaining that you don't work properly.
Not working properly? What has Arnold been seeing to say such a thing? After all, this house was built because I worked hard and earned the money. I wanted to retort to Loretta, but thinking that perhaps Arnold hadn't said such a thing, I endured and reluctantly decided to clean her room as she asked. While I was cleaning, Loretta didn't help at all and just relaxed comfortably. After about an hour of cleaning, when I was nearly done, I spoke to Loretta.
Oh. Finally finished, I see. I'll be expecting this regularly from now on, thank you.
Okay. I was too appalled to say anything. Why should I have to act like your maid? Loretta's remarks were infuriating, but what angered me more was the thought of Arnold. Did he really say I don't work? I decided to confront him about it at dinner.
By the way, I heard from Loretta that you've been complaining about me not working? Well, I did mention it a bit. My sister is working hard at the factory, part-time. Sweating it out to earn her keep, and you're always at home, right? Just seemed a bit unfair, you know?
Arnold has an older sister named Olive, 2 years his senior. Olive has a 3-year-old child and gets along well with her husband. Our relationship is pretty good, exchanging messages occasionally. Still, I couldn't believe Arnold actually harbored such thoughts. Hearing Arnold's true feelings left me in shock. I thought he was on my side. From the next day, Loretta's treatment of me became even harsher. It started with just cleaning, but gradually escalated to give me a massage and make me some coffee, treating me like a complete maid. Arnold, as usual, had no intention of looking for a full-time job. Hey, isn't it about time you find a full-time job?
Quiet. You're earning well, right? Then it's fine.
Between Arnold's refusal to listen and Loretta's daily demands, my mental state was reaching its limit. Olive, I'm at my breaking point. Please help me.
Are you okay?
After enduring this life for 3 months, I sought help from Olive, who acted promptly and sternly addressed Arnold and Loretta. Thanks to Olive, the harassment subsided for about 2 weeks. Then, one evening, as I was washing the dishes after dinner, Arnold said he needed to talk.
What about?
Just wait.
I've called Mom, so sit down and wait.
What on earth am I about to be told? I waited on the living room sofa for Loretta and Arnold, feeling frightened. Sorry to keep you waiting. Arnold said you wanted to talk. As I said this, Loretta and Arnold exchanged glances and smirked maliciously. Then Loretta slowly started to speak.
This house, it's going to be Olive's family living here. So could you leave? LOL. What?
What are they talking about all of a sudden? Confused by the situation, I was just shocked by Loretta's words.
Hey, you listening to Mom's words? LOL and this. Huh? What's this?
Arnold handed me a piece of paper. When I unfolded the half-folded paper, I realized it was a divorce application. I had no idea what Loretta and Arnold were up to.
You see? It's a divorce application.
Arnold watched my reaction with a laugh. But why must I go through this? I worked hard to buy this house with my own money.
What's going on with you two all of a sudden?
I appreciate that you bought this house. But the thing is, Arnold has been suffering because you earn more than him. A person who can't show respect to her husband doesn't belong in this house. So, we thought of letting Olive live here instead.
Yeah, that's right. You've been having it too good, and honestly, I've been irritated. It's not like I wanted to quit my job, but you kept nagging me to find work. I was sick of it.
I see. So, that's why they've been so harsh to me. I'm utterly dismayed by such childish reasoning. Since I bought the house with my earnings, I wanted to tell them they should be the ones to leave. But I'm tired of dealing with them.
Ha. Okay, I understand. So, I should leave, right? Wow. That was quick. With you gone, the nuisance is out of the way, and we can live comfortably.
When I agreed to leave, the two of them were ecstatic, holding hands and rejoicing. If that's how they want it, I'll show them. Just you watch. I'll make sure they get what they deserve. At that moment, I decided to seek revenge against the two of them. The next morning, I packed the bare minimum and left the house. Loretta and Arnold saw me off, but they didn't seem to feel sad at all.
Make sure you file the divorce papers properly, will you? LOL. Just thinking about not having to see your face anymore is refreshing. We'll take good care of this house, so don't worry.
They said whatever they wanted. Don't worry, I won't let you have your way any longer. After leaving the house, I immediately called Olive.
Hello? Olive? Hello. What's up?
Well, actually, I told Olive that I had been kicked out of the house by Loretta and Arnold. I also mentioned that they said Olive's family would be moving into the house in my place.
What? What's going on? Can we meet and talk about this right now?
It seemed like Olive was hearing about this for the first time. As she suggested, I headed to a nearby cafe to discuss the details. 5 minutes after I arrived at the cafe, Olive entered. Sorry for the sudden call.
No, it's totally fine. Besides, I don't have a home to return to anymore.
I said it a bit self-deprecatingly, and Olive's expression became serious.
About that. I haven't heard anything about this from Mom or Arnold, and I honestly had no idea. My husband and I were actually planning to build a house somewhere else. Really? You didn't know? I had no idea.
This was surprising. So Arnold and Loretta lied about Olive moving in, just to kick me out. Well, then there's no need to leave that house to him. I'm relieved to hear that.
I was actually thinking about selling the house. Even if you were really moving in. This settles it. I'll make sure those two don't get to enjoy it. Yeah, those two have gotten way too cocky. Rosa, you do what you think is best. I definitely can't defend them after all this.
It felt good to talk to Olive.
I'm glad I could talk to you, Olive.
Thank you. After leaving the cafe, I went to the courthouse and first submitted the divorce papers. Then, I headed to a real estate agent and told them I wanted to sell the land and the house, handing over the deed. Those two, unaware of this, are probably living carelessly. Every time I think of their faces, I get infuriated. According to the real estate agent, due to the good location and the newness of the building, a buyer should be found quickly. Please contact me when it's sold. I'll be staying at my parents' house for a while. I left the rest to the real estate agent and went back to my parents' house. When I returned to my parents' house after an hour's drive, my parents were there to welcome me. But they were very surprised as their daughter had returned home so suddenly. 2 weeks later, I received a phone call. It seems there was a prospective buyer for the house. They wanted to view the house as soon as possible, and it was scheduled for the upcoming weekend.
Can I join you on that day? As a former resident, I think I can guide them through every corner of the house more thoroughly.
When I proposed this to the real estate agent, they immediately contacted the prospective buyer, and the reply was, "We would appreciate that very much." Ah, your happy life is about to end. I can't stop smiling, imagining their panicked faces. And then, the day of the viewing arrived. As the real estate agent opened the front door, Arnold rushed out in a panic.
Who are you? I'll call the police.
Arnold yelled angrily, which intimidated the real estate agent, but I spoke up from behind.
Don't worry about him. He has no right to say such things. Ha! Rosa! What's going on?
Ignoring Arnold, I led the prospective buyer and the real estate agent into the house.
So, this is the living room.
While I was guiding them through the house, Arnold came to interfere with us, raising his voice again.
Hey! Wait! What the hell is going on here?
Hearing the commotion, Loretta also arrived. Ah, this is so annoying.
What are you doing here? I'll call the police.
The police? Go ahead and call them. This house isn't yours anymore.
I'm really sorry for the disturbance during the viewing. I'll just go and talk to those two, so please feel free to look around. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.
With that, I took Arnold and Loretta outside to explain the situation. Arnold's face was red with anger.
You were talking about a viewing or something, but why is our house being viewed? Yeah. It's shocking that you just showed up like this.
They still don't understand the situation. Then, I'll tell them everything.
Our house. What nonsense are you talking about? Listen, I bought this house. My name is the only one on the deed. Also, I talked to Olive. And the story about Olive's family moving into this house was a lie, wasn't it? The plan changed suddenly. That happens all the time. Do you think that excuse will work? I spoke directly with Olive and confirmed it. The story you told, Olive had never heard of it before.
As I said this to them, they bit their lower lips and became speechless.
Also, I'll tell you who those people are. I sold this house. So now, the rights to this house belong neither to me nor to you, but to the real estate agency. That's why there are prospective buyers viewing the house today. Do you understand now? But that's so selfish. What about where we will live? I don't know about that. Moreover, if you don't leave soon, you might be reported to the police for trespassing, you know?
As I spoke coldly, Arnold and Loretta began apologizing to me with faces that looked like they were about to cry. Don't say such harsh things. Don't abandon us. You know how little I make each month, right? I can't even live properly with that. Look, let's call off the divorce and live together again. Yeah, I think that's best. Such rotten people. I found myself slapping Arnold across the face in a fit of anger.
Stop being so spoiled. Who was it that initiated the divorce? Wasn't it you? And isn't your low income because you've been too lazy to look for a job until now? And Loretta, aren't you too convenient, always pampering Arnold and trying to kick me out of the house? Let me tell you, I have no intention of taking care of either of you ever again, and I will never forgive you. Now, choose whether you want to pack your things and leave immediately or if you want me to call the police.
I unleashed all my pent-up feelings, panting from the outburst. I'm sorry. We're truly sorry." Whether they were intimidated by me or not, the two of them hastily went back inside the house. Within 20 minutes, they emerged with their belongings and ran off somewhere without looking back. They were truly troublesome. They had the audacity to live off me without any gratitude and expected to continue doing so. They'd better live their lives in desperation from now on.
I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. It's all fine now. I don't think those two will ever appear in this house again, so please rest assured.
After seeing off the two, I apologized to the prospective buyer and the real estate agent and continued with the viewing. 2 weeks later, I received a call. The sale of the house was officially finalized. Finally, I was able to sever ties with that house filled with nothing but bitter memories. Phew. I can finally relax. Just as I was thinking this, I received a call from Olive.
Hi, long time no see. How have you been? Long time no see. Oh, about that house, it's been successfully sold. Really? That's great.
We had a light conversation for a while, but then I started wondering what Arnold and Loretta were up to. By the way, what are those two doing now?
Oh, they're living together in a cheap and dingy apartment. Arnold is still only working part-time at the grocery store. It seems like he's started to seriously look for a job, but at his age, it's tough to get hired. They're making so little that Mom is also working a part-time job stocking shelves at the supermarket. Considering everything, getting a divorce might have been the right decision for you.
Olive was right. If I had continued living with them, my burden would have only increased.
Haha, lol, that might be true, lol. I'd like to keep in touch with you, Olive. Is it okay if I call you occasionally? Really? That would be great. Please do. Let's go out for lunch sometime with my child.
And with that, the phone call ended. I guess it suits me best to live my life alone, doing what I like. For now, I think I'll steer clear of marriage and relationships. Agriculture, huh? Sounds poor. Just completely mismatched with our family. My future mother-in-law said to me during a family meeting. I was well aware that my fiancé was the heir to a prestigious company. And I thought I understood what it meant to become his wife, how challenging it could be. But the words of my future mother-in-law were more cutting than I expected. She looked down upon my grandparents, who raised me, as mere country farmers. The arrogant future mother-in-law always stayed true to herself. This did not change even during the family meeting we had with my grandpa. However,
Emily, haven't you realized?
The shocking past revealed by my future father-in-law. Hearing this, the pride of my future mother-in-law was shattered. My life has been a whirlwind in the first half. Now as an adult, I sometimes feel that way. My name is Serena, I'm 27. As a child, after losing my parents one after the other, my grandparents raised me. My dad passed away from illness in my first year. And my mom suddenly disappeared in a car accident when I was in 4th grade. I somewhat understood my dad's death because others told me, but I fully comprehended my mom's. Perhaps due to the difference in my age, I had somehow moved on from my dad's death. But accepting my mom's took much longer. Supported by my grandparents, I believe I've overcome the sadness of being without my parents as I grew up. And they gave me unlimited love. To ensure I didn't struggle, they put me through college, always prioritizing me. I'm currently working as a professional in a company. In this industry-leading and long-established company, there are various people. But I never imagined I'd meet the president's son, let alone date him.
Serena, would you date me?
Tyler was one of the employees seconded from a subsidiary to the head office. Only a few people in the company knew Tyler was the president's son. I didn't know until Tyler and I started dating and he confided in me.
Dad said to work at the head office, but I wanted to see every part of the company for the future.
Really? I believe in the necessity of starting from the bottom, even if it's not quite apprenticeship. Tyler and I participated in various projects together. He always worked more earnestly than anyone, taking on even the smallest tasks. When needed, he could lead and inspire the team. So kind, yet strong and dependable.
Marry me.
On our second anniversary. At the aquarium, our first date spot, Tyler knelt down and proposed to me. It was a classic proposal.
I'd be honored.
With happiness and a bit of shyness, I accepted his proposal. When I told my grandparents, they cried with joy.
Serena is getting a family again. It's like gaining another grandchild.
My grandparents were looking forward to meeting Tyler. Having the family grow seemed like their greatest joy. I lost my parents, but my grandparents had lost their child. Our home lost its liveliness, and all of us tried unconsciously not to be weighed down by sorrow. For our family, my marriage was a very bright topic. I planned to bring Tyler home to meet my grandparents soon, but first, we had a family meeting with Tyler's family. Tyler's parents' home is, in essence, the president's house. That alone made me nervous. Moreover, the house we visited was magnificent from the entrance, and the interior was spacious and beautiful.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Serena.
Oh, so you're the one.
Serena, is it? Emily, my future mother-in-law, was cold from the beginning. Or rather, she had no intention of welcoming me in the first place. Emily is the president's wife. Going back in time, she was also a president's daughter. As Tyler told me, our company was originally founded by Emily's ancestors. And her grandfather and father had been presidents in succession. Tyler's dad, Kent, the current president, took over the company.
I'll do my best too. But in our house, Mom's dominance always prevails. Dad and I are overshadowed at home.
Tyler had hinted at Emily's nature beforehand, but the real thing was more impactful. Emily eloquently spoke about her family history. How she was raised in a distinguished family, maintaining her dignity. And how much effort she put into Tyler's education as a mother.
Tyler attended the same elite school as me and our entire family. Yes. Not just yes, Serena. Do you understand what that means? Hey, Emily. Kent, be quiet.
Shrugging off Kent's attempt to calm her, Emily glared at me.
Do you understand the value of the school that Tyler and I attended, Serena? The kind of privileged people who should attend there? What do you think? Mom!
Tyler also stood up, leaning towards Emily. But Emily, unfazed, turned her criticism towards Tyler.
Tyler, you had such a wonderful environment and connections. How could you choose someone like her as a marriage partner? Hey, that's rude to Serena. Rude? Tyler, I'm disappointed. After everything we've given you. Enough about the house, the family, please. Yes, it's supposed to be a happy occasion. You all be quiet.
What was supposed to be a meeting for the upcoming marriage turned into a family argument. I couldn't intervene, and in the end, Kent somehow managed to calm Emily down. On our way out, Kent desperately apologized to me.
It's okay. I'm sorry for troubling you today.
No, it's not your fault.
It's our fault.
The disappointment I felt seemed less than the shock Tyler and Kent experienced. Kent approved of the marriage, but Emily only reluctantly accepted it, not welcoming me. Whenever I joined family meals as a fiancé, Emily would sigh and express her discontent. Once, she asked about my family. I told her the truth, not hiding anything. How I lost my parents early and was raised by my grandparents. How we overcame sadness together, the three of us, supporting each other. How my grandparents worked hard in agriculture so I wouldn't have to struggle. I am nothing but grateful to my grandparents. I believe my parents are watching over us, but the love I received from my grandparents who were actually there for me, I still remember it strongly. I conveyed my feelings. The rest was up to how Emily felt about it. I hoped she would understand, even a little, but I was naive. Agriculture, huh? Sounds poor. Just completely mismatched with our family.
Mom! How could you say such a thing? That's right. Emily, how far will you go in belittling people? Belittle?
I'm just telling the truth. Emily and Kent argued as they used to. Kent apologized to me while scolding Emily. But that wouldn't make Emily back down. The meal ended in a heavy atmosphere. Serena. If you're fed up, you can leave me. Marrying me means dealing with Emily. I can't cut ties with her because of the company. Think about it while you still can. Hearing Emily mock my grandparents and seeing Tyler with such a tired, dark expression left me at a loss for words. But I managed to respond. It's okay. I feel sorry for Grandpa and Grandma, but I'm fine with this.
Really?
Tyler and I continued to encourage each other as we moved towards our marriage. I knew we had to meet with Grandpa and Grandma soon, but I wasn't looking forward to it. What should I do? As I thought about this on my way home, my face must have shown my distress.
What's wrong? Why such a gloomy face? Did something happen with Tyler?
Grandma saw right through me, and I had no choice but to open up about everything. I told them about Emily's personality and what she said about me and my grandparents, leaving them in silence.
Well, I suppose we should meet them once. Let's have a dinner soon.
Grandpa finally spoke up. He instructed me to arrange the time. But he insisted on a high-end restaurant. I was puzzled, but Grandpa just laughed. Don't worry, I'll pay for the meal. That's all Grandpa said in the end. On the day of the dinner, Grandpa arrived alone. Grandma, shocked by Emily's behavior, refused to meet her. Grandpa and I waited for Tyler and his parents, but Tyler messaged that he and Kent would be late. That meant Grandpa and I would have to deal with Emily first. Just the thought gave me a headache. As I held my head, Emily arrived, greeted us curtly, and sat down. She looked at me and Grandpa with a very displeased expression.
You didn't have to match our family with a high-end restaurant. A lower-class place would have sufficed.
No.
It would be rude to meet for the first time in such a place.
Oh, I made you worry.
But I wonder how long you can keep this up. It's harsh to expect such standards from country farmers. Well, we prioritize living a healthy and honest life over money.
Grandpa faced Emily calmly and firmly, without changing his attitude or behavior. Emily seemed displeased and spat out sarcastic comments and irritation towards Grandpa. Sorry for keeping you waiting. Tyler finally showed up. Kent followed him. Kent started to say something but stopped when he locked eyes with Grandpa. Ah.
Hey, you two. Why apologize to these people? If we make them wait, that's how it should be treated.
Hey, Emily. Kent's lips trembled, and his face turned pale with cold sweat.
What now? Another opinion from you? No. Emily, don't you realize? Eh?
As Tyler and I watched in surprise, Kent deeply bowed to Grandpa.
Chairman, I deeply apologize for my wife's numerous rudeness.
Please forgive us.
No need, Chairman is a title from the past.
President, today's not about that.
What? What is it? Quiet! It's not what? This man was once the chairman of a corporation that saved our company from a crisis.
Huh? What? I didn't know that.
Emily has always been a haughty lady.
Kent remembered calling Grandpa chairman, but Grandpa had once managed several companies. By the time I was a child, he had become a farmer, and according to Grandma, he had wanted to retire early from being a businessman. I had no idea how significant a businessman Grandpa had been. But according to Kent, Grandpa was a wealthy and well-known chairman of a famous company. Back then, the company I work for was on the brink of bankruptcy under Emily's father's presidency. With no hope for a loan from the bank, the company was saved by Grandpa's company, where he was the chairman and also a business partner. Emily turned pale and stiffened at Kent's words. Let's have a pleasant dinner today, as a start to our future relationship. With Grandpa's smile and words, the tense dinner began. We ate cheerfully, without showing any irritation. Tyler and Kent seemed a bit dazed, but occasionally smiled and chatted with Grandpa. Emily, however, kept her head down and barely moved her hands. The wedding preparations accelerated after the dinner. We set the wedding date and planned the ceremony and reception. Marrying a company heir was more challenging than I thought. Emily was completely left out of the loop. After making a big mistake at the dinner, she seemed to have lost all her usual boldness. She was restless and awkward around me. When asked for her opinion in wedding discussions, she just shook her head. It was unimaginable she would ever be as aggressive as before.
Emily, I have something to discuss.
As I spoke, Emily tried to leave.
Wait, please. I'd like your advice on the dress design, color, and venue decoration.
It would be wrong for me to give my opinion.
Emily looked down, feeling worthless. That's not true. You're familiar with dresses and know about glamorous things.
That's no longer useful.
No, it's important to me. I want to talk about such things with you, Emily. I can't with my mom anymore.
I had given up on doing things with Mom a long time ago. It was the path I had to live, and there was nothing I could do about it, even if I hated it. But deep down, I had always hoped for it. A wish I never shared with Grandpa and Grandma. I knew it would only trouble them. But I could confide in Emily. Even with everything that had happened, she would become Mom when I married Tyler. I needed to face her properly first. I'm sorry. I never tried to understand your situation, Serena. Emily apologized with tears in her eyes. I silently nodded, taking her hand. Emily chose a beautiful red dress for me. Serena, a softer shade suits you better than a dark red. Emily, who knew about flowers, helped with the reception venue decoration. Tyler and Kent looked on happily as I, the planner, and Emily gathered together to discuss. I'm ready to live with my new family. Including my own life, I want to build happiness. For 40 years, I've been the backbone of my family. I prioritize them over myself, investing more time and energy into their well-being than my own. My husband, Richard, who was once so kind before we married, changed. He became obsessed with gambling, accumulating debt, and even having affairs, all while neglecting our children. Despite everything, I was betrayed by Richard and my sister Susan.
We don't need the housekeeper, Deborah, anymore.
Richard passionately argued about Susan's allure over mine. Richard, come live with me. Susan smirked as if she had everything planned. After throwing the divorce papers at me, they left triumphantly. The surge of hatred, disbelief, sadness, and pain. A series of misfortunes awaited. She never intended to be friends with me. I was completely used by Susan. I felt all my efforts were in vain, leaving me utterly exhausted. During this time, Nancy, my son Joseph's wife, offered her support. Noticing my distress, she approached me. I managed to calm my heart and shared everything with Nancy. She listened patiently and kindly to the end. When I mentioned Susan's name, Nancy fell silent, deep in thought. Suddenly, she asked to see the security camera footage, which puzzled me, but I showed her the recordings. The moment I showed her, Nancy smiled and uttered shocking words.
"That's great." "Huh?"
I didn't understand and asked Nancy what she meant.
"Well, those two."
Nancy began to reveal a shocking truth. I am Deborah, 63 years old. Living with my 65-year-old retired husband, Richard, I've been supporting him as a housewife. Supporting Richard is hard and tiring, but there were moments I enjoyed. One of them was meeting my sister, Susan. Though we're not related by blood, I call her my sister. Why do I refer to someone seemingly unrelated as my sister? Going back 46 years, I met Susan when I was 17. My beloved mom had passed away from an illness. Since then, Dad seemed lonely and lost his zest for life. Dad began to drink more and more, and I was worried about him. It seemed he didn't want to come home anymore. Gradually, Dad started going out at night. Honestly, I didn't want to come home much either, as it reminded me of Mom. One day, after being out late, Dad came home with a woman and a little girl I didn't recognize.
"Dad, who are these people?"
I asked, surprised by the sudden visitors. Dad told me the woman was Sandra, his lover from the pub.
"This woman has been a savior to me."
It turned out Dad had been frequenting the pub to fill the loneliness after Mom's passing, and Sandra had become his emotional support. Susan was Sandra's daughter. Since Sandra was also single, it didn't take long for them to get along. Eventually, Sandra and Susan, who is 14 years younger than me, moved in with Dad. Ugh. This is really irresponsible. Honestly, I didn't want to see Dad's messy affairs and wished he'd kept that away from me. But seeing Dad happy for the first time in a while made me feel relieved. He had been so down lately, I decided to overlook it. Having a cute sister-like figure, despite the 14-year age gap, was really joyful for me, who never had siblings. Coming home to play pretend with Susan or play with dolls was heartwarming. It felt like what having a sister would be like. When Susan laughed as we played, it warmed my heart. My house, which I once dreaded returning to, became a place I couldn't wait to get back to. Life was surprisingly enjoyable, but it didn't last long. When I turned 18, Dad passed away. It was probably due to his excessive smoking and drinking. I warned him many times, but he wouldn't stop, and his health deteriorated. The funeral was the next day, and seeing Dad, who was once full of life, lying lifeless in the coffin was heart-wrenching. Dad had his faults, but after Mom died, he raised me alone. I hadn't repaid him for that, which filled me with sadness. I wished I had done something to repay him. I regretted so much in my heart. After Dad's death, Sandra and Susan moved away to be with another man. I was shocked by how quickly Sandra moved on, but more than that, I was deeply saddened by being separated from Susan. Even though we weren't related by blood, she was my only sister. I was left completely alone. But now, with Dad gone, I had to think about my own life. There was no time to dwell on the sadness of Dad's death or the reluctance to part with Susan. I had relatives handle the house's cleanup and disposal and immediately looked for a job with a dormitory. I didn't have time for sorting and disposing of things, and focusing on job hunting seemed like the best way to avoid being overwhelmed by grief. Finding a job was incredibly challenging for me, given my limited education. It seemed almost impossible to find anyone willing to hire me. There were times I nearly gave up during my job hunt, but I persevered. Eventually, my efforts paid off, and I landed a job. I was hired to work in a hospital as an administrative assistant. The job was tough, but my boss was kind and taught me well. That boss turned out to be my future husband, Richard. We gradually became close through work and started seeing each other privately. I enjoyed spending time with Richard immensely. Perhaps because he was 2 years older, he seemed to know so much about everything, and I found our conversations fascinating and him incredibly attractive. Before long, I realized I had feelings for Richard. Then, one day, as we were spending time together as usual, Richard suddenly confessed his feelings for me. "Would you consider dating me?" I couldn't believe it at first, thinking my feelings were unrequited. Yet, I admired Richard in every way, both professionally and personally, and the idea of being approached by a man I was interested in thrilled me. That's how our relationship began, and it went smoothly from there. Richard treated me like a princess, cherishing me deeply. I thought being married to Richard would mean living happily every day. Inspired by this thought, I dedicated myself to him. Cherishing each other brought us immense happiness. "Deborah, will you marry me?" I was happy until the moment I retired from the hospital job to marry Richard and he proposed. Those were probably the happiest times of my life. However, after we got married, Richard's attitude changed drastically. Richard turned out to be what you might call a henpecked husband. Things became difficult after that. Even though I was busy with household chores on weekends, Richard would just sleep at home.
"Richard, I really need help with the housework. It's too much for me alone." "That's your job, Deborah. I'm exhausted from working all week. You should be able to handle this." Where had the kind Richard gone? I should have realized something was wrong then, but I was too naive and kept blaming myself. During this time, Richard and I had 2 children. Our first son, Joseph, and then Thomas. Even after the children were born, Richard hardly helped around the house, so I was left to take care of the kids and Richard almost entirely on my own. Joseph and Thomas were a handful. They were going through adolescence and rebellious phases, and being boys, they ate a lot, so I had to cook in large quantities. Raising Joseph and Thomas was draining, both physically and emotionally. When they left home, I felt a mix of loneliness and pride in seeing them grow up, which always warms my heart when I think about it. And for 40 years, I've supported Richard, Joseph, and Thomas as a housewife. Of course, it wasn't always smooth sailing over these 40 years. In fact, there were more hardships than not. Richard became obsessed with gambling afterward and racked up debt. Furthermore, he had affairs, which was very hard on me. I even came close to depression and sometimes thought about divorce. Our irritations led to fights, and gradually, Richard and I stopped having proper conversations. I wondered how things got to this point and if it was all right to continue this way. However, thinking of the children, I believed it was better for them to have their dad around and persevered. Perhaps due to that effort, Joseph became a general contractor, and Thomas found a job at a trading company. I am proud of Joseph and Thomas. Recently, Joseph married Nancy, whom he had been dating for many years. Nancy is very polite, has her own opinions, and is friendly and adorable. Seeing Joseph happy made my heart warm. I'm glad I worked hard to raise them to this point. I can't wait to see my grandchildren. Though I never said it out loud, that's what I was thinking. Then, I turned 60. One day, while I was at the hospital for a routine checkup,
I noticed a woman in the waiting room and was startled. She looked just like Susan, had grown up from the little girl she once was. I thought it might be a case of mistaken identity, but decided to speak up.
Excuse me, do you have a moment?
The woman turned around, a bit surprised. Yes, who are you? It was definitely Susan. I recognized her immediately, even though she had grown up. Seeing her well made me feel relieved, and I nearly teared up, but I held back not to trouble Susan. Then, I gathered my courage and invited Susan to a cafe. On the day, I talked about the time we lived together. About the year we spent together, playing pretend and with dolls. Unfortunately, Susan didn't remember me. That made sense. Susan was about 4 years old then, and considering Sandra. She probably moved around a lot with her constantly changing partners. I felt sad, but if there were many such changes, my memory would be a minor detail to her. Yet, Susan entertained my stories, smiling as if we weren't strangers. Her smile, even as an adult, was just as adorable and unchanged. I didn't want to grow distant like before. I wanted to become closer, so we exchanged phone numbers. Time flew by when I was with Susan. I think we've become quite close this time. I resolved not to have regrets this time, and made an effort to keep in touch. Before long, Susan and I started meeting occasionally. Initially, I was the one who invited her, but eventually, Susan began to invite me as well. It felt like having a close sister who was also a friend, which made me very happy. I never thought we'd meet again, so it was all the more special. Being able to talk and laugh with Susan again brought me immense happiness, and I found myself frequently mentioning Susan to Richard. Our conversations about Susan were lively, a rarity between Richard and me. "Let me meet Susan next time," Richard said, surprising me with his unusual interest. Given his usual indifference to my affairs, I felt a leap of joy that he showed interest. It had been years since we had talked so deeply. It felt like our once cold relationship was warming up again, reminiscent of old times. Susan seemed to be a catalyst for enriching not only our marriage, but also our daily lives, making them more enjoyable than they had been in a long time. I thought it would be fun if Richard and Susan got along. Then Susan said, "Let me greet Richard next time." Excited, I invited Susan over to our house and introduced her to Richard. I was so elated at that moment, unaware of the harsh fate that awaited us. Susan began visiting our house frequently, sometimes even when I wasn't home, enjoying lively chats with Richard. I couldn't help but wonder if Richard was getting closer to Susan than to me, as if Susan had taken him from me. I felt a mix of sadness at losing my family and happiness that they were getting along. I hoped the three of us could go out together someday. Today, unusually, Susan wasn't here, and Richard was out, leaving me alone. I planned to bring up the idea when both were around next time. But an event occurred that shattered all those feelings. When Richard returned home, I went to greet him as usual but was met with a shocking scene. Susan and Richard came back arm in arm, looking very intimate. I was stunned and breathless, fearing the worst. I kept telling myself that Susan couldn't do such a thing. Why together? Before I could ask, Susan spoke up. "Richard, I want to live with you." My mind couldn't comprehend what was happening. Susan was smiling triumphantly. Was this woman really the Susan I had thought of as a sister? Huh? Disbelief came before sadness or hatred. I was utterly dumbfounded. To think the person I doted on like a sister could do this. No, perhaps I was the only one who ever thought of us as sisters. Maybe Susan had always intended to take Richard from me. That's why she wanted to meet him, creating a pretext to get closer to him. I had believed Richard would not have another affair, especially not with Susan, which made the shock even more profound. As I stood there dumbfounded, Richard also spoke up. "We don't need the housekeeper, Deborah, anymore." Richard went on passionately, emphasizing how I didn't appeal to him as a woman, praising Susan for her appearance and thoughtfulness, and highlighting all the ways she was attractive. Richard must have grown tired of me and, upon meeting Susan, who was younger and more attractive, chose to have an affair. How irresponsible to have an affair at his age. Affairs are unforgivable at any age, but I never expected one at this stage of our lives. Richard's request to meet Susan was likely not out of interest in my stories, but because he was interested in Susan. "Susan is more attractive as a woman than Deborah. Deborah should take a lesson from her." Those words pierced my heart like a knife. A mere housekeeper, lacking in feminine allure. Perhaps that's true. For 40 years, I've supported my family. I had no time for fashion. Busy with all the housework alone, I had no time for myself. Being criticized like this by Richard, whom I had devoted time and effort to out of love, was more than I could bear. Richard had been living with these thoughts all along. I thought he was silent, but still treasured me somewhere deep down. Richard, having aired all his grievances, threw the already signed divorce papers at me and left triumphantly with Susan. Why has it come to this? My sobs echoed in the silent room. A mix of astonishment, anger, hatred, and sadness welled. Had I spent more time on self-care, could this have been avoided? I should have divorced sooner. Given he was prone to debts and affairs. He wasn't worth staying with, even out of endurance. If I had divorced when Joseph and Thomas left home, I wouldn't have had to endure this pain. As I slumped down, the ringing of my mobile phone in the dim room broke the silence. It was Joseph. Answering the phone, I sensed something was off with him.
"Joseph, what's wrong? You sound strange."
Worried, I asked, and Joseph, with a trembling voice, muttered, "Thomas has died in a motorcycle accident." Thomas dead in an accident? I couldn't believe it, wishing it were a lie. Rushing to the hospital, I found Thomas was already gone. I couldn't accept this reality. The thought of Thomas, who was just fine until recently, suddenly being gone was unbearable. Memories of Thomas flooded back.
"Mom, thank you for everything."
I remembered Thomas saying this on Mother's Day, presenting me with carnations. Such memories brought unstoppable tears. Overwhelmed by successive misfortunes, I shakily dialed Richard's number. But Richard didn't answer, no matter how many times I called. All I heard was the ringing, and I barely remember what happened next. Without any contact from Richard, funeral preparations moved forward. As I dealt with Thomas's death, I grew increasingly frustrated, wondering where Richard was and what he was doing. Noticing my agitation, Nancy spoke up with concern. "Deborah, are you okay? If there's anything you want to talk about, I'm here to listen." I hesitated to burden Nancy with my troubles, but having no one else to turn to, I took her up on her offer. I told her about Susan and Richard, and then about learning of Thomas's death, how misfortunes had piled up one after another. There were moments I couldn't speak through my tears as memories overwhelmed me, but Nancy listened patiently and comforted me until the end, lightening my heart. Upon hearing everything,
"That's unbelievable."
Nancy was visibly angry.
"You've done nothing wrong, Deborah. Richard lacks gratitude for everything you've done for him. It's appalling he would say such things to someone who devoted their life to him."
Seeing Nancy angry on my behalf made me feel a bit more at peace. Talking to Nancy had cleared my mind a bit. I was grateful to have her listen. As I tearfully expressed my gratitude, Nancy quickly comforted me and was eager to help me figure out what to do next. However, Thomas's funeral took precedence. Nancy promised to help me more after the funeral, which went smoothly despite Richard's absence. I couldn't help getting irritated again, thinking Richard was probably unaware of Thomas's death, enjoying his time carelessly with Susan. After calming my anger over the next few days, Nancy came to visit.
Deborah, can you tell me more about what happened? I might be able to help.
Nancy wanted to be of assistance. I detailed how I met Susan and how she got close to Richard. When I mentioned Susan's name, Nancy seemed to ponder deeply. Then, with a look of realization, she asked to check the footage from my home security camera. After a burglary in our neighborhood, Nancy had suggested installing a camera at my entrance when I consulted her. Sure enough, the camera would have recorded Susan's visits. But what would we do with the footage? Curious, I showed Nancy the videos featuring Susan. Upon viewing them, Nancy smiled and said,
"That's great."
Surprised by her unexpected words, I blurted out,
"Huh?"
Caught off guard, I asked Nancy what she meant.
Actually, Susan was an acquaintance from my college days.
Shocked by this connection, I eagerly asked Nancy for more details. It turns out Susan's bad behavior was well known even back then. She seduced men, regardless of whether they were single or married, and played around with them. It was unclear who her current boyfriend was. In fact,
I have 3 boyfriends right now,
Susan boasted. Her casual relationships had likely earned her resentment from several men. Susan also had a reputation for being reckless with money, rumored to have borrowed from past boyfriends. Given that Sandra lived a life of moving in with one boyfriend after another, it's no surprise Susan ended up this way if she grew up watching her. I was half in disbelief, yet somehow, I found myself able to think about it calmly, feeling somewhat relieved. Susan didn't want to be friends with me or took Richard because she fell for him. It was all for money. She had a history of involvement with married men and was probably broke from being sued by a wife. Richard wasted our long-standing bond, deceived by Susan's beauty. Foolish man. I found myself wishing he would take responsibility for his actions. Nancy was aware of Richard's past misdeeds.
Both Richard and Susan should take responsibility for their actions,
Nancy said with a sharp, slightly venomous tone. Probably angrier on my behalf than I was. Her kindness felt incredibly warm. After expressing my gratitude again, Nancy smiled shyly. I then filed the divorce papers Richard had thrown at me. By then, my heart had healed enough to go through with it, marking the end of my long marriage. Never did I imagine my marriage ending this way. It was tough. Looking back, it was filled with hardships, but it's over now. Dwelling on the past won't help. I need to focus on the future. Thinking about having my own time felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. I later learned that Susan had indeed approached Richard for his money. Our reunion was purely coincidental, but she had plotted to take his money from that moment. I treated her like a sister, but Susan was only interested in money from the start. Learning the truth, I was beyond feeling sad or shocked. Susan had manipulated Richard into buying her designer bags and lied about Sandra needing money for an illness to extort funds from him. Richard, now without income, had given Susan a large sum of money, believing in her, only to be left penniless and eventually disregarded by Susan, despite having divorced from her. Returning home to find it sold, Richard, who had never been good at socializing, found himself without anyone to turn to. While it was tempting to feel pity for his unfortunate situation, considering everything he had done to me, it was clear this was his own doing. Hopefully, this experience would teach Richard a lesson. I ended up moving out of my home to live with Joseph. Initially reluctant to impose, I eventually agreed to live with them. Joseph really married a wonderful person. I'm glad he has such good judgment. I never expected to be treated so kindly by Nancy, feeling as if I gained a daughter. I'm beyond grateful to Nancy and hope to repay her kindness someday. After finishing sorting through Thomas's belongings and everything else had settled, I stood in front of Thomas's grave and reported all that had happened.
It's been tough for me, but the accident must have been very hard on you, Thomas. Please watch over us from above.
With that prayer, I left Thomas's grave. Finally, everything came to a close. Reflecting on recent events, it's clear there haven't been many good moments. It's been a tumultuous journey. Despite the affairs and the debt that made life difficult, it wasn't all bad. I'm immensely grateful to Nancy for everything she's done. Joseph, unlike me, has a good eye for people. With the changes in our lives, Nancy became pregnant, allowing me to fully enjoy the grandchild I had long hoped for. What a joy it is! The grandchild, bearing resemblance to both Nancy and Joseph, is adorable. I hope they don't grow up like Susan. I wish this family all the happiness in the world, free from such troubles. But with Nancy and Joseph, I'm confident they'll be fine. Their mutual respect and care for each other are evident. Something Richard and I lacked. We were unable to continue valuing each other as we did before marriage. Though I have no plans to remarry, I've learned the importance of cherishing others from Joseph and Nancy. I still have much to learn. With these thoughts, I watched Nancy and her family shared joyful laughter. So, how about giving Mom back to us? My brother Ralph and his wife, who selfishly abandoned our mom Melanie, on their own terms, now come to demand her return as if it's their right, without even an apology.
I'm embarrassed and ashamed that such a despicable man is my brother.
My name is Allegra. I'm 38, working while raising 2 daughters, aged 7 and 5. I married Lucas, my colleague, and we're still working at different branches of the same company. Lucas is kind and helpful with childcare and housework, but when we hit our busy season, both of us are swamped at work. At that time, finishing late and rushing to pick up our kids from daycare and school.
We decided to work together as a couple, but I feel like crying because of physically and mentally exhausted.
My mom, who lives about a 30-minute drive away, supports me through these times.
Also today, beaten by the busy season and unable to cook, she brought a load of her homemade dishes.
When Mom opens the door, my daughters rush to her as if they've been waiting.
Grandma! Welcome back!
Oh, it should be hello first. Ignoring my amused reaction, my daughter takes Mom's hand and leads her into the house.
My girls just adore their kind and fun-loving grandma.
Allegra, I also bought your favorite pudding. Have some with the kids later.
Mom, thank you. Delicious meals, playing with the kids, and even caring for me, I'm deeply grateful to Mom.
But then, her mobile phone rings, it shattering the peaceful moment.
Hi, got it. I'll be back soon.
After hanging up, Mom sighs softly.
From Cheryl? Yes. She wants me to buy a cheesecake from that new bakery.
More of Cheryl's whims. You had kind of same issue before.
Cheryl doesn't work, she should buy it herself. I know. But she's hurt because of Ralph. I need to be kind to her.
Mom, if they ask too much, promise you'll tell me, okay? Thank you. Mom smiles brightly, for reassuring me.
Still, I can't help but worry about Mom's relationship with Ralph's family.
Ever since Dad passed away 2 years ago, Mom's been living with Ralph and his wife. During the discussion about Dad's inheritance, Ralph and his wife suggested Mom to live together. Mom, who suffered from mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts, initially refused it.
But Ralph insisted and was wanting to live with Mom at any cost.
When I probed further, it turned out Ralph had been fired few months ago. He messed up something and couldn't find work in the same industry. Now he got another job, but its salary drastically reduced. Unable to afford his high-rise apartment with a monthly rent of $2,000, he wanted to inherit the family home in exchange for taking care of Mom.
It wasn't out of concern for Mom living alone, but for money. I advised against it, saying it would only bring stress and Cheryl, who was unemployed, could work to support themselves. However, Cheryl, my sister-in-law, cried out, "But Ralph promised during his proposal that I wouldn't need to work ever."
She was adamant about not working. Eventually, Mom gave in and agreed to the living arrangement as blaming Ralph for breaking his promise to Cheryl. Since moving in, Cheryl was feeling betrayed by Ralph, stays in her room, surfing the web or playing online games. She leaves all the housework and shopping to Mom, making her run errands like today. It's frustrating to see Mom being taken advantage by Cheryl. Even when I express my concern for Mom's well-being to Ralph, he, feeling guilty towards Cheryl, just avoids the issue. And Mom, she just says, "It's Ralph's fault," and gives in to Cheryl's demands. It seems Cheryl resorts to verbal abuse when things don't go her way. Mom is completely innocent in this. Feeling helpless about how to improve the situation for Mom, and frustrated that I couldn't do anything, a worst-case scenario unfolded. One weekend. Got something to discuss. Unexpectedly, Ralph came to our house. I had a bad feeling, but sent the kids and Lucas to the park and welcomed Ralph into the living room. Ralph, looking conspicuously gloomy, sipped the tea I prepared and then started speaking gravely. "You know about the bad blood between Cheryl and Mom, right?" "Well, yeah," I said ambiguously. "It's more like Cheryl is just using Mom for her own benefit." Ralph seems oblivious to my reaction, nodded exaggeratedly. "Cheryl's so stressed about it, it's a real problem." "Huh. I think it's Mom who looks worse off. I'm her husband, I need to prioritize Cheryl." "Huh. That's admirable, a true model of husband." "So, I've decided Mom should move out." "Huh." His outrageous statement made me yell in disbelief. "Kicking out Mom? Not Ralph and his wife? No way! Why should Mom leave?" Ralph was visibly shaken by my outburst, continued his selfish reasoning. "No choice. Cheryl's been crying and saying she can't live with Mom anymore." "Then Ralph should leave." "That's impossible. You know, my salary dropped from $100,000 to $40,000. I can't survive if I leave that house." "That's because you got yourself fired. If Cheryl doesn't want to lower her living standards, she should work." "Nah, Cheryl really doesn't want to work." "That's all Ralph and Cheryl's convenience. Don't make Mom clean up Ralph's mess anymore. How about Mom, living on her pension, supposed to survive if she's kicked out of her house?" I couldn't believe how selfish this couple was. Anger boiling over, I fiercely accused Ralph, who darted his eyes around in panic. Then he dropped a bombshell. "I get it, I do. Your anger. But aren't you forgetting something?" "What?" "The house is in my name." His chilling words froze my heated mind. That was under the condition that Ralph would take care of Mom, right? Yeah, but, you know, situations change. Ideals and reality differ. Why is this someone else's problem to you? Can't help it. No matter what you say, legally, that house is mine. Ralph smirked smugly. Ah, this man, he planned to kick out Mom all along. You are despicable. I hurled the word at him, filled with all my contempt. Ralph looked down at me with cold eyes, his mouth twisted oddly, laughing. Ha ha ha. After laughing and popping a snack into his mouth, Ralph went away and left me trembling with anger. Anger, sadness, disappointment. My head was swirling with negative emotions. Above all, thinking of Mom, betrayed by Ralph, made my heart ache, almost bringing me to tears. I can't let Mom get hurt anymore. I have to protect Mom. That night, after the kids were asleep, I told Lucas about what happened during the day. Holding back tears, with a trembling voice, I shared my story.
Lucas, deep in thought for a while after hearing me, finally spoke slowly. Hey, how about we invite Melanie to stay with us?
Eh? I was taken aback by Lucas's suggestion. I had intended to invite Mom to live nearby. So Lucas's suggestion was more than I could have hoped for.
Is that okay? Why not? Melanie has done so much for us. It's about time we can repay her kindness. I'm actually happy about it,
Lucas said, smiling in a way that made him look almost divine.
Lucas, thank you.
Sure thing. It's been a while since our family grew. I resolved to love this playful man for the rest of my life. A month later we made up our minds. I went to my parents' house to bring Mom to our home.
This house now belongs to Ralph. Never set foot in here again.
I'll never forget Cheryl's harsh parting words. Mom was downcast in the car and stood anxiously at our front door when we arrived. My heart ached at her sight, and I was lost for words. It was my daughters who melted Grandma's worries, bursting out of the house with smiles.
Grandma, come in quick. We're having a party today. It's a welcome party for Grandma, Dad said so. Sis and I decorated your room. And there's cake too. Look, look.
Lila, Marla.
Melanie, welcome home.
Lucas.
Touched by the welcome from my daughter and Lucas, Mom's eyes moistened. I too wiped away hidden tears.
Mom's insurance money from Dad, and nearly everything else, had been siphoned off to support Ralph's family. It seemed they let Mom go because there was nothing left to exploit. Really, they're just the worst. And so it began our life with Mom. Initially, I worried about burdening Lucas, despite his kindness in taking Mom in. But that concern quickly vanished.
Because Mom's housekeeping skills were incredible.
Coming home from work, I'd find delicious smells, a clean house, and neatly folded laundry. When I realized vegetables were growing in planters what used to be full of random flowers, and my vegetable-hating daughter was happily harvesting and munching on them. Before I knew it, Mom had even become friends with the neighbors, chatting in gardens I had never visited. Not wanting to leave everything to Mom, I joined her in the kitchen when work was less demanding. But I couldn't come close to matching her efficiency and flair.
I used to be terrible at housework. My mother-in-law always scolded me,
Mom would say, and laughing. Eating her perfect dishes, I was constantly reminded of Mom's incredible skills as a homemaker and the effort it took to get there. Thanks to Mom's magic-like homemaking, Lucas and I could fully dedicate ourselves to work. Especially Lucas, who, since Mom moved in, his sales performance significantly improved and even topped the branch for the first time.
Melanie is like a goddess of fortune,
Lucas said with admiring eyes, while Mom just chuckled. On weekends, no longer filled with chores meant more time with the kids. The newfound ease in Mom and Dad's lives brought more smiles to our children's faces during the weekdays. There have been other changes too, but living with Mom has definitely been a positive for us. Of course, we still have things to adjust to with each other, but work and private life are going almost frighteningly well. On the other hand, things haven't been going well for Ralph and his wife since Mom left. After Mom's departure, Cheryl initially enjoyed the mother-in-law-free life, and Ralph seemed relieved seeing Cheryl so happy.
But it appeared they hadn't really adjusted to a life without Mom's support.
Cleaning was minimal, walls stayed dirty, and the garden was neglected. Laundry piled up for a week, washed but never put away. Garbage accumulated because sorting was too bothersome.
In no time, the house turned into a neglected mess, overrun with weeds and looking like a dirty junkyard inside and out.
Of course, meals were all about eating out and deliveries.
Under such living conditions, it's no wonder work wasn't going well.
Ralph, who had been fairly enthusiastic about his new job before kicking Mom out, fell ill often due to his unhealthy lifestyle. And faced the threat of being fired again due to constant lateness and absenteeism.
The neighbors, who had been fond of the kind and sociable Mom, could never welcome Ralph and his wife.
They weren't harassed, but they were definitely left out. This tragic situation of the Ralphs was relayed by Mom's friend, who lives nearby. Moreover, Their house is a 45-year-old wooden structure. Without careful maintenance, it's prone to problems.
The neglected water heater broke down, and Cheryl, who disliked letting others into the house, that's why it LEDs for days on end with only cold water in the winter. In spring, a wasp nest formed under the eaves, and Cheryl, who hadn't noticed, got stung badly.
Of course, with Ralph and his wife's scant earnings and constant spending, money was tight.
Cheryl, cooped up in her room, seemed low-cost at a glance, but it turns out she was spending about $1,000 a month on online gaming.
With over half of Ralph's salary was vanishing into gaming expenses, Ralph finally realized the gravity of the situation and wanted to stop Cheryl's gaming habit. It makes daily arguments between a desperate Ralph and a Cheryl unwilling to quit.
So, I was thinking, maybe we could get Mom back. What do you mean, so? Just 6 months after separating from Mom, Ralph came asking to take her back, without an apology, earning nothing but contempt.
Lucas, standing next to me, had an expressionless face.
It's just that ever since Mom left, it's been one misfortune after another. It's not misfortune, it's just the result of your own actions. Wouldn't things be solved if Cheryl did some housework and got a job?
That's, well.
Ralph glanced at Cheryl, who averted her eyes. Clearly, Cheryl had no intention of doing anything, just wanting Mom back as a convenient slave. Nothing but contempt for the selfish and dependent Ralph couple.
At that moment, Mom appeared from the living room. Though I had told her she could stay hidden, the commotion over her must have piqued her interest. Ralph, my child. Mom's face was expressionless too. Yet Ralph happily addressed her.
Mom, you heard, right? You want to return to the house Dad built, don't you? Cheryl, too, says it's better with you around. Cheryl, is that true?
Well, yeah. Cheryl mumbled a response, looking down. Despite her clear lack of enthusiasm, Ralph said,
See, Cheryl is happy too. Let's go home.
He reached out his hand to Mom. Mom gazed at Ralph's hand.
Mom, who cherished the house she had with her husband. Mom, who couldn't quite abandon Ralph.
My heart raced at the thought of the compassionate Mom returning to Ralph's side again. But the next moment, Mom swatted his hand away.
I'm not going back. What? I never want to live with you two again. Mom! Mom!
I exclaimed in surprise, and Ralph in despair.
Why? Your son is in trouble. You used to say that parents should help their children when they fail.
As Ralph lamented and Cheryl looked on in shock, Mom spoke calmly.
I used to think that too. But I was wrong. What? Living with Allegra and her husband made me see. When Allegra failed, her husband Lucas supported her, and when Lucas and I had awkward moments, Allegra, as his wife, would step in and resolve them. That's what marriage is about, supporting and growing with each other. Mom. I felt tears welling up at Mom's words. It was also my fault for not letting go. I thought that as a mother, I was responsible for my son's actions regardless how old he gets. But I realized that by always stepping in, I was robbing you of the chance to grow as people and as a couple. You're 40 now. Your time of parental obligation is long past. Clean up your own mess. But Mom...
Rejected by Mom, Ralph, a big man, flustered in a way he'd never imagined. Ignoring him, Mom turned to Cheryl, who was irritably biting her nails.
Cheryl, the promise to be a housewife forever was only with Ralph. I have no obligation to take care of a stranger. You don't have to work, but live a life that suits that choice. Cheryl glared at Mom resentfully.
But Mom didn't care anymore.
Ralph, you inherited that house. You can continue living there or sell it. But I'm done doing anything for you and your wife. But Mom, I... Go home. And don't ever show your face to me again.
Frightened by Mom's ferocity for the first time, Ralph fled. Cheryl, left behind, glared at us fiercely before following Ralph.
Oh.
Mom, drained, slumped to the ground. Before I could rush to her, Lucas was already at her side.
Ah, that felt refreshing.
Nice job, Mom. Lucas offered his hand with a smile, and Mom grasped it, smiling happily. However, the Ralph couple, still dependent on others, didn't change easily. Ralph, devastated by Mom's rejection, neglected his job even more. Cheryl didn't work, eventually resorting to loans for gaming expenses. By the time Ralph noticed Cheryl's debt, it was too late. Debt collectors came every day, the house was seized for unpaid taxes, and the couple, with nowhere to go, declared bankruptcy. Ralph was fired again and now works long hours at a live-in factory in the mountain, where taught by scary people. Of course with Cheryl. Cheryl, unaccustomed to real work, seems to be going insane every day in the harsh labor and internet-free environment. Ralph frightened by her craziness.
I want to divorce and return.
He begged, but I replied. The family home you took was auctioned off because of you. You have no place to return to, so live happily ever after with Cheryl. Then he broke down crying pitifully. How foolish. The only brother I share blood with, but that's all I can think. 7 years later. Celebrating our 15th wedding anniversary, my husband and I were on a trip to Anchorage. Mom suggested we celebrate as a couple while she looked after the kids. Our middle school daughters, still adoring Grandma, were excited about a pajama party with her, posting on social media. Lucas and I have been successful in our careers, with him in a significant position at headquarters and me working hard as a branch manager. We're grateful to Mom for supporting our lives, and to kind-hearted Lucas for living harmoniously with her.
Ah, I wish we could go to the zoo too. Anchorage is too big, so it can't cover in just a 2-night, 3-day trip. We can come back for the next anniversary again.
Thinking of a future still together in 5-10 years. I felt fortunate to have met Lucas, munching happily on delicious food.